Shout out to the gayest podcast out there with Ross and Calum, Jiu Jitsu Oracle.
This edition of the Jiu Jitsu Oracle is nice and simple. It's matches we want to see at CJI 2 this weekend. I'm Ross, that's Calum. What I'm going to do is pick one athlete on each of the 8 teams, and then Calum's going to give me the matches that he wants to see that athlete take part in across the event. We don't have the brackets yet, but that said, even if we do get the first round matches, some of these teams could be having 3 matches across the weekend. So there's plenty of scope for these matches that we come up with in this episode to actually take place. So Calum, let's start with the team we ranked as our favourites going into the event. Just narrowly, mind, over a couple of others, but we had New Wave on top of our rankings. Let's pick wildcard Mica Galvao as the athlete we're most looking forward to seeing at the event. Let's talk about some matches that we could see Mica take part in.
Yeah, I think Mica's probably got the most amount of matches that I would be interested in possibly seeing. One of the ones that springs to mind the most would be him versus Jozef Chen. I think that's been talked about quite a lot recently. Both two of the best guys in that weight class. Mica's a bit more established with his accomplishments, but I think Jozef's trajectory with his skill development is getting him towards that level. And I think it'd be really interesting on the feet. I think Jozef's got a slightly bigger arsenal on the feet and a bit more technical on the feet, but Mica's got that quickness and reaction, athletic sort of advantage on the feet. So it'd be interesting to see how that goes. If Jozef ends up on top, Mica's still got a very dangerous guard, but obviously Jozef's known for his passing, so it'd be good to see how that plays out. Or maybe it plays out like Jozef versus Ty Rotolo, where Jozef has to play from guard. But I think anyway the match goes, it's going to be very interesting to see how it shakes out.
So that would be a New Wave v B team situation.
Yeah.
Now, let's just say we get that long-awaited New Wave v B team showdown, which could well be the final, or maybe there's a chance that it could be a semi-final based on the bracket. But the New Wave v B team showdown is because of the fallout of the DDS, right? So if we were to get one guy on this current New Wave roster that best represents New Wave, going back to like the DDS time, and one guy on the B team roster that could best represent B team, and then we have that big clash between the teams, but also between 2 individuals representing either team. Who do you think that would be? What match do you think that would be?
Well, New Wave doesn't have any OGs.
Okay, so like, who's the most OG on the New Wave team?
Be Giancarlo, but he only really kind of came along once they became New Wave instead of Dan Herb. I think he's the oldest member of the squad.
So we've got Giancarlo, and then who's the most OG member of B team?
It would have to be Ethan, but I don't see that being an overly competitive match.
You think Giancarlo would win?
Yeah.
Okay. So what about Nicky Rod against Giancarlo?
Yeah, I think that would be more interesting. I would see Nicky Rod probably winning that just on his size and athleticism advantage.
But do you think that could be a match that we get 2 guys carrying the flag for each team, like Captain New Wave, Giancarlo, and B team OG, Nicky Rod? We could create a bit of hype around that scenario, right?
Yeah, and I guess if you were to align captains to each team, those 2 would be the respective captains of their own team.
Yeah, and then we've got Coach Nicky Ryan on B team. Do we get Gordon Ryan coming along and get the brothers on either side as well?
Still yet to be seen if Gordon's going to attend the show. I'm really looking forward to seeing that, because I've seen John put up a bunch of different posts, and I think one today where he had like Mica, Baby Shark, Giancarlo, everyone training together, and Gordon was not anywhere to be seen. So I don't know if Gordon's still going to be in Texas holding down the gym, and John is going to go to Las Vegas, but I'm very interested to see if he does go. But yeah, if he does, might get a brother showdown with the coaching.
Let's continue talking about B team. So we mentioned Jozef Chen Is he the athlete on B team you're most looking forward to seeing? And outside of Mica, which other matches do you think could be interesting for Jozef?
Yeah, Joseph is the one I'm most looking forward to seeing. Him versus DeAndre Corby is another match I'd really like to see. Another two guys that skill set trajectory is really going up and up. Both really technical guys, good on the feet, good everywhere. So that would be good to see. Joseph versus some of the other top guys at 77 like PJ Barch and Dante Lewin would be good to see as well. And then one match I'd really like Nicky Rod to end up in is him versus Pat Downey, just because obviously as far as credentials in grappling, Nicky Rod is far ahead, but I see it being a very difficult match for Nicky Rod. I've heard that Nicky Rod is actually quite good at guard and leg locks, and I think he would have to utilize that in that match because I don't see him having an easy time getting on top of Pat Downey, even if he's going to try and pull guard and wrestle up. I think he would probably hit a brick wall trying to wrestle up against someone like Pat Downey. And they had a wrestling match in the past, I think, and he got smoked, tech faulted 10-0. So the wrestling obviously isn't very competitive. Nicky Rod better at pure jiu-jitsu, but we would have to see his guard in that match, I think, for him to have any success. So I would be quite looking forward to seeing that.
Okay, so continuing on the America, because they don't really have any South Americans to make it an Americas. The America team, Pat Downey as your chosen athlete for them. Anyone else you'd like to see Pat up against?
I guess a lot of the top guys are in that weight would be interesting just to see, you know, like the best guys in jiu-jitsu, how do they do against someone that is from a really good wrestling background, big and athletic, and has only been doing jiu-jitsu for a few years. So I guess him versus Kainen, him versus Felipe, him versus Victor Hugo would all be interesting matches to see as well.
All right. Like, comment, subscribe, rate, and give us your suggestions for matches as we go along, either for guys that we've identified or for guys you really want to see or matches you really want to see happen. Just on the America team, let's talk about Taylor Pierman from the UK, who's going to be on that team as a wild card. What do you think would be a good matchup for Taylor? Maybe for Taylor to show the best of him in the event, because I'd really like to see Taylor do well.
Yeah, I think to get the most out of watching Taylor, would need someone to actually engage with his guard. He obviously did well in trials, but ADCC, he was against El Monstro and wasn't too much engagement from top on his part. So someone that's actually going to try go in and pass his guard, or someone that's going to pull guard on him and we get to see his passing. I think Giancarlo might be a good match. I know that they've trained together in London. I've heard certain stories about how the rounds went, so that could be an interesting match. Obviously, on paper, accomplishment-wise, they are world apart at this point, but I think that could be a potentially interesting match. Hulk could be an interesting one as well. You know, physical veteran versus Taylor's guard, because Hulk will engage and try to smash Taylor's guard, so that could be some interesting matches for him.
Okay, let's talk about another UK competitor, Owen Jones. We've highlighted him as the one to watch from the European team. What would you like to see Owen come up against at this event?
Yeah, I'd really like to see him against DeAndre Corby. Even though DeAndre is doing the 77, they are both typically 66 guys. I think they've got, in a certain sense, quite opposite games as far as like Owen's very quick reactions, can kind of pull stuff out of thin air and snap stuff up, which could cause DeAndre some problems. And then DeAndre is very control based, very like strong isometrically, good passing. So it'd be interesting to see that clash, and I think it would give a good indication of where Owen's at, because I think DeAndre is kind of established as one of the best guys now, even though he didn't have the best performance at ADCC, just given that match with Pato. I would like to see a rematch versus him and Fabricio before Owen really took off after his trials win. He had a match against Fabricio on some sub-only card in Italy, and Fabricio like passed his guard control and didn't manage to submit him. But with Owen's like newfound confidence with his successes, it would be good to see a rematch with that as well. And then also it'd be cool to see him against some bigger guys, because I know he's spoken about wanting a Lachlan Giles moment of like heel hook and Kynan or something like that. So it'd be interesting to see him get that opportunity and what he does with it.
At these types of events, ADCC, CJI, we always see shocks. We always see a breakout performance. What do you think about my idea that Pavel Jaworski could be the guy to burst onto the scene and have a breakout performance, a submission win that perhaps people who don't know loads about him get surprised by?
Yeah, I think he's definitely got the potential to do that with his kind of game, and then with people maybe not knowing the most about him and knowing exactly what to avoid, that could definitely happen. I think one more for Owen as well, though, would be Ethan, just because of the obviously relationship he's got with B Team. I'm sure they train together a bunch, so it'd be cool to see those two compete in a competitive match.
Okay, let's go to the third continental team next, Australasia. Who's the guy on Australasia that you're looking forward to seeing?
I'm looking forward to seeing Fabricio, just because Fabricio rarely has a boring match, and then as well, rare for one of the 66 guys, that I'd be excited to see him against pretty much everyone, just given how he performs against better guys. And then obviously he's more than capable of performing against guys in his weight class as well. I think he's capable of being on the feet against pretty much everyone in the competition. He's got a good guard, even though you don't see it as much because he's quite insistent on his wrestling, and his passing's amazing as well. So lots of matches I'd like to see him involved with. DeAndre Corby would be another one. I've mentioned DeAndre a bunch of times, but that would be an interesting one. Jozef Chen as well. And then maybe against another one of the bigger guys like Nicky Rod would be quite fun as well.
Was Nicky Rod perhaps just a smidge too big? I'm thinking of like Fabricio up against like a Bedone or something, but and he's done well against like Bedone and Owen Livesey before. I wonder when you start getting to like Nicky Rod / Victor Hugo, etc., whether it's maybe just a smidge too big. So like I'd be looking for like an 80. What about Pixley? He'd give it a go, right?
Pixley would be good as well, yeah. Yeah, I think the competition that really highlighted how well Fabricio can do against bigger people was that Polaris event where he beat Giancarlo and Owen Livesey, and then he lost to Kynan. Kynan kind of wrestled up, got his hands together on a double leg, and then picked his arms up around his waist and continued with the body lock pass. And so once he got his arms connected around him, he kind of just didn't give up that position until he ended up passing his guard and keeping him pinned. So I think Nicky Rod's definitely got the potential to do that, get like a lock double straight into his body lock passing, and then that would be the beginning of the end. But it would be interesting to see Fabricio's agility trying to avoid Nicky Rod's wrestling.
What about a match between Fabricio Andre and Mica Galvao?
Yeah, that would be interesting as well, because of Fabricio leaving their team. So Fabricio used to train with Baby Shark and Mica. There was some potential controversy around Mika's dad, I believe, was the reason that Fabricio wanted to leave the team.
Well,
yeah,
let's just say Fabricio left, and perhaps people can look at reasons why online, but perhaps it's to do with Fabricio's relationship with his former coach. Who knows? But looking at the match between Fabricio and Mica that could take place, what do you think?
Yeah, interesting. Having like seen both of them in person at Worlds and stuff, there doesn't even look like there's that much size difference in them. Fabricio is pretty well filled out for that weight class. Both of them extremely explosive and athletic. So from that perspective, I think it would be a very interesting match to watch.
One I want to see from this team, and shout out for giving us a great interview. And if you haven't seen it, you'll find it on our page. It's Belal Echebarri. He's another one like Jaworski who could have a breakout moment, because Belal, bigger guy, good guard, really good leg lock attacks, and what would you say? Pretty attacking with his guard at times. So I think he could have one of these moments. Like on this team, we saw Lucas Kennard have at the last CJI against Victor Hugo. Of course, we could get a rematch of that situation, although I'd be surprised if Victor got caught out again by Lucas, who got the submission win at CJI, which shocked everyone. But I just want to give Bilal a shout out because I love chatting to him, and I think there is going to be a guy at this event that breaks out that we don't really know, or not that we don't know, but like a lot of people haven't seen as much of. So he could be in there. Another guy who could have a situation like that would be Marcin Makovic from Europe. So one thing on this, before we get towards our last two teams, which I think is Daisy Fresh and Atos, is for a lot of these guys, like the leg lock guys I'm mentioning, who could have like a breakout submission win, who do you think are like pretty engaged guard passers that really need to be careful, you know, like someone who's like active that wants to go for it, that could give some of these guys like a Taylor Pierman or a Pavel Jaworski a really good match that we want to see? And it's not just like top guy like disengaging or whatever, but we get the threat of the top guy passing and controlling and pinning and submitting the bottom guy, or we get the bottom guy getting able to leg lock. Is there like some guys that are maybe like 88 or 99 that you think, yeah, they'll go for it against these guys and not just like try and get a draw and get out of there with their leg intact?
Yeah, I think Nicky Rod, Jozef Chen, John Colabadoni, Kainen, all those guys will.
PJ?
Yeah, PJ. I think most guys in this competition aren't really the stolly type that I can think of. You know, there's some guys in the competition I'm thinking that have used that strategy in competition before, but I think for the most part, just based on like what the event's been set up for, that like most of the guys are going to engage and try to actually do stuff, unless their team really needs like that guy taken out. Then they might stall a little bit, but for the most part, I think there's going to be good engagement.
Okay, I think we haven't dived deep into Daisy Fresh, although we mentioned Dante at the start, and I brought up Pixley as we went along. So, who's your guy on that team, and what would you like to see them face at CJI 2?
Yeah, Dante against Jozef Chen. We'd like to see that. Rematch with Mica, see if that was like a fluke or not, or if he's consistently able to beat someone like Mica.
Do you think Mica wears the belt again if he goes up against Dante? Because I think there's some controversy as to whether Dante got into the attacking position at ADCC by having a little tug of Mica's Luta Livre belt that he was wearing, if I remember that situation correctly.
Laws of ADCC though, because obviously like you can wear pretty much wherever you want, and you can choose to wear a gi, but like is it not the case that if you wear that, the other person can grab it?
Not sure.
I mean,
not sure, but yeah, I think that's the case. Was there not something, perhaps, I don't know if it was Mica or someone else had said maybe Dante had a grab of the belt on his way in. So
good solution for that for Mica, I guess, would to not wear a belt to a no-gi competition, and that would probably solve that issue.
Yeah, well, we'll see if it's different with the New Wave kit, you know. And in fact, I'd imagine you're only going to be allowed to wear the kits that are being handed out to the teams for this event that we've seen advertised online.
Yeah.
So, Dante Leon, yeah, I pretty much want to see Dante against anyone.
I think rematch against Pato as well, now that Dante will be his natural weight, could be interesting as well, because obviously Pato, he looked in when Dante went down in weight at who's number one, so that could be interesting.
All right, last team.
Another one would be Pavel Jaworski, just because Dante's beaten Matthias a couple times, and they're obviously training partners, so it'd be interesting to see if he was able to utilize his passing against Pavel as well as he can against Matthias.
Good shout. Last team, one of the favourites, Atos. Who do you want to see and why?
Probably Kainen, just because, one, it's Kainen. Two, he's obviously had some inconsistent performances in certain competitions like ADCC. He looks pretty much unbeatable outside of Lachlan Giles. But yeah, like it'd be interesting to see if Kynan in this competition rises to that level, and then how he does against like the multitude of heavier top class guys. So him versus Nicky Rod again, him versus Luke again, him versus Pat Downey, as we spoke about earlier. Any of those matches would be really interesting to see.
I think he's got the most amount of interesting matches potentially out of all the guys on that team, because it doesn't really matter who Kynan's up against. There's a variability where he could absolutely smoosh them or he could get caught.
Yeah, I think him versus Mica as well. They had a match in the gi. I think Kynan got DQ'd for a lateral knee bar, which was illegal, something like that. But it'd be cool to see them have a match in this no-gi setting.
Okay, well, that's our picks for matches we want to see across the weekend. Get into the comments. Let us know what you think, and we'll be back with more analysis of matches once the brackets are finally out for CJI 2.